I'm going to start the segment. I'm going to go ISO, and then Will is just going to rattle off things that he would like signed by various people.
They're just weird things that you want signed.
Fantastic. Okay. But a weird thing that will be signed is a 4-year, $160 million contract for
beautifully done
for Daniel Jones. I thought so. I felt good about that. Because franchise tag, deadline day, some things were utilized, and I mean, we could talk about all the franchise tag things, but I don't want to bore you. I mean, I feel like personally I'd be bored just getting into all those. The major things that it felt like, or the major players that it felt like came about from the decisions to be made on a franchise tag day were the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants.
Yeah.
And the New York Giants was a fascinating one because they have two players that were in play for the franchise tag.
But this is definitely the one that, from a Giants perspective, they had to do and not the other way around.
Yes, because the idea was you have Saquon Barkley, your running back, who is, out of contract, and then you have Daniel Jones, your quarterback, who is out of contract. And so the idea was they wanted to try and get a deal done with Daniel Jones to solidify him and then utilize the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley. I know there's a lot of people that have gotten into the mindset or the school of thought on running backs where you don't really want to pay that second running back deal, right?
But we damn sure know that we don't want to go Kirk Cousins, Washington situation again, right?
Well, I mean, doing the franchise tag for Daniel Jones? Yeah. Well, maybe, because it's the thing. Now they are committed for 4 years, and I guess you could say that they're really committed for 2 years because out of that $160 million over the 4 years that Daniel Jones got from the Giants, $82 million of that is guaranteed, which basically works out to the first 2 seasons of his contract are guaranteed. After that, I imagine that you could get out of that pretty scot-free. And so if you consider that, all right, cool. You only really have him for the next 2 years, and maybe you can start planning ahead for what you are going to do to move on from him.
Well, right. And the flip side of that is if you do the franchise tag on Daniel Jones and he crushes it next year, you're screwed.
Are you?
Yeah, because then otherwise what are you going to, you got to franchise tag him again? You'd almost have to, because he's not going to sign any other deal, because once you do it a second year in a row, I'd have to look exactly as what it is. But
there is a repeater.
Yeah, and then you, like Kirk Cousins, it was like, okay, he's good enough to win. We don't really have a backup plan here, and we kind of have to pay him. Otherwise, we're starting over at quarterback, and likely if you're even having to make the decision, you're coming off of a pretty good season if your quarterback played well enough for you to even consider it.
But here's the thing, Will. The franchise tag this year, non-exclusive, is $32 million. They made him a $40 million average annual value quarterback. Right? And this is the thing that has everybody in the NFC East and a lot of other teams elsewhere jumping for joy in one way, at least fans, right? I imagine owners are looking at that and continuing to tug at their collar as it gets hotter in here for the cost of a quarterback. But that's a dude who, that's like, I don't think anybody really views him highly as a quarterback. He, if anything, this last season showed you, he can be capable, and within the right context, he can be useful.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing is something that we knew to some extent, but it is further solidified, which is that it's basically a binary. Is this quarterback one that you want to keep or one that you want to get rid of? And if you hit the I want to keep him, you got to pay him a good amount of money.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good he is. A la Daniel Jones. And so that is a part of this that I found fascinating from the Giants portion of it. Obviously, Saquon Barkley will be tagged, and he's got to be sick because he gets $10 million for this next season while taking all the more hits that he's been taking with all the injuries that pile on.
He's a running back. We don't really need him.
Oh,
so,
wow.
No, that is a sad part of it, though, right? Because we've shown or have seen in the NFL over the last really decade that you can find running backs, really good ones, late in the draft. Now, are they as good as Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott for that period of time, Adrian Peterson? No. But is that necessary to win you a Super Bowl? Not really.
No.
So it's just become more expendable. I know. I mean,
I'm just talking from the player perspective.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because, and this is where, and I'm sure, we'll get into Lamar.
Oh, that's next.
Where I see and agree with both sides. I totally agree with where Lamar's standing and where the Ravens are. But going back to the Giants, I think if you are in the building, and they've said as much, although this, I think, came from Wellington Mara last year, like, we couldn't have screwed this kid up any more than we have. Then you bring in Brian Daboll. That's quite a difference that was made. So I think if you have him a second year with him, maybe, I mean, look, the ceiling on Jones, maybe we're not giving enough credit to, I mean, I'm not trying to say that he's going to turn into Josh Allen, but he was tough to beat last year. I mean, he was playing pretty good for a team that had a lot of holes on it.
I mean, that's something that we'll find out over the next at least couple of years with them, is how valuable that ends up being for them. Obviously, we got some trolls in the truckwreck.com text line. You're welcome regardless. That have said that Daniel Jones is better than Dak Prescott. You can hold on to that if you would like to.
Good luck with using that one in public.
Me and you, we probably can't talk about quarterback evaluations.
No.
That's all. That's all. I mean, we still appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Get Right. Now we got to talk about the one that gets my blood boiling. Lamar Jackson, wow, that happened out of nowhere.
Boy, this is taking me back to our old fan jams.
Yeah, that would happen to me, right?
Yeah.
Just a frog in my throat.
No, not that. I mean, because I know where you're going and what your perspective is.
Let's play the game.
Okay.
Give me Reggie's perspective, Will.
That Lamar Jackson is one of the elite talents at the position and has won an MVP.
Okay.
Has also carried the team. He's carried the team offensively. They've had all kinds of injuries. He's had some as well, and has been nothing but 100% for Baltimore. And they are not showing really that they want to invest in him like he is invested into himself and his career and the franchise. Is that somewhat close?
Yeah, that's pretty close on what I think on the entire idea of the conversations and negotiations there. When you also got to think about the fact, right? Let's lay out the situation here. Lamar Jackson seems to be angling for the fully guaranteed quarterback contract akin to what Deshaun Watson got in Cleveland. The Ravens seem to be fighting tooth and nail to not do that. And it feels weird that we haven't been able to find any level of middle ground. I mean, what was reported was the guaranteed money on the contract offered was $133 million, which is less than Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson, which feels like a slap in the face for a dude who has been the entirety of your franchise, right? Even if you say, we can't guarantee this all the way, you can guarantee more than that, right? At least I imagine so.
Could I interject one thing into that part of it?
Yeah.
If he has an agent, we probably find that.
I think it'd be more likely that we find that. I'm not certain that we find it, but I hear your thought process, and I do think it's a somewhat valid one because I feel like
it's not just. I mean, he's going in there on your behalf. One, two. He can also be the voice of reason. First off, I think he would have gotten a number that would have been better than the one you just said that Ravens got him. Okay. So that would have happened. One, two, the voice of reason to say, hey, it's not everything we wanted, but it's pretty damn close. And that's how negotiations work with professional athletes.
Sure, but I mean, one of the things that's interesting, though, and it's worth noting, right? I don't think this is solely Lamar Jackson that feels this. Of course, Lamar Jackson does look up and he's like, hey, man, this is what it is for me, and you need to come close to it, if not get there, right? That does not go away if you have an agent bringing you the deal, right? Whoever is bringing you deal, that is simply a middleman at this point. If he is so locked in to,
but you don't have to be involved in those discussions.
Sure.
In which a lot of times
and they have
tough
lost
truths.
Yes.
And I say truths lightly because they might
just tough
be
words,
from
right?
the perspective of
Right. Tough words are going to go back and forth in a negotiation, right? And yes, you definitely have lost time in the idea that you have a player who is playing, actively negotiating the contract, and maybe his mother also assisting in that. I don't know exactly what the minutia of that is, but that is basically what is happening here. So you lose time when he is saying, for a season, I want to focus on the season and not negotiate. And that is time that you would normally be able to work some things out with an agent, right?
Right. Yeah.
Don't forget, NFLPA is invested in this in a good amount of deal, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the information that we have heard, I have speculated, NFLPA is probably putting it out here because The Ravens are notoriously a tight-lipped organization. Lamar Jackson hasn't really told us stuff unless he got on his Twitter to tell us.
But he's not giving details.
Right. I wonder if the things that we are learning are from the NFLPA because they are also invested in getting as much guaranteed money.
Oh, absolutely. The NFLPA wants nothing more than the tide to keep rising. That's what they want.
Yep.
Right. To go up and up. And that's where another part of where I see it from Lamar Jackson's standpoint to be like, okay, how many MVPs does Deshaun Watson have? That would be 0, unless I missed one.
I didn't. No, I think you counted them all. Yeah.
Think so.
Mm-hmm.
Same amount of playoff wins because that's where Lamar gets knocked, or same amount of road playoff wins, something like that. He's, you may look at Deshaun and be like, okay, as a quarterback, maybe he's shown on the field to be a better quarterback back when he was actually playing, but the dude hasn't played for a long time. He also has all the off the field stuff, which Lamar has none of it. So if I'm Lamar, I'm be like, yeah, I should get what that dude got plus $1.
And I couldn't blame him at all for taking that perspective. Right. So, okay, let's not relitigate because that's the part that we've been discussing forever.
Yeah. So I understand the Ravens standpoint too.
No, absolutely. And it really is the ownership standpoint in general. Because this is one thing I found fascinating. The Ravens have, in every other facet of this relationship, drafting, public media, all of those things, they have been as down for the quarterback as I could see any other situation being, right? Like, they have been so down, and it's kind of amazing that this ends up being the holding up point. However, now we get to this place where they are on franchise tag day, and because they haven't not gotten a deal and they do not want this guy to just walk out of the building as a free agent, they franchise tag him with the non-exclusive franchise tag. So what happens is that is lesser guaranteed money, and that also offers the opportunity for any other team to come in and negotiate a contract Lamar Jackson. Then they would have an opportunity to match if they would want to, or if that team does in fact get a deal, they would have to compensate the Ravens at least 2 first-round picks. And so I find that to be fascinating because all this has done is you take a bona fide good quarterback. And I'm not willing to debate this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. I know that a lot of things I would like, yeah, let's have a debate. I don't really want to do that because that gets us in the mud and doesn't give us the opportunity to discuss the matter. A bona fide good quarterback being exposed to being poached is something we do not see in the NFL.
You're right. Especially one that's won an MVP.
It's just something we don't see.
In recent years. I mean, it's not like it was, in an earlier part of his career like 10 years ago, and he's turning 34. That's not what we're looking at here. I think that, and I'm not surprised to hear today about all these teams that were like, we're not going to pursue this. I believe that at some point they might, but right now to say that, I believe it, because in order to get him, you'd have to make a large commitment. Not to mention give up 2 first-round picks for a guy that's missed 10 games the last 2 seasons, and part of what makes him great is his ability to run. And it makes him a bit of, it makes it a risk, more of a risk.
He's an MVP winning quarterback, and it's a quarterback scarce league.
But are you sure you're going to get that Lamar for the duration of that contract?
Brother, they just gave Derek Carr $150 million. Right? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Right? This is the thing is you can not like it. There just needs to be one.
Yeah.
And this is why, and of course.
Which I think there will be. What they're saying today, I'm not saying I don't believe them. Right. I'm just thinking okay, that's true at the moment.
Sure. But then also this then gives some idea or some room, some air to the fire, right? That there might be a potential for this to be the larger, not even just a proxy war. Now like the real actualization of the war between PA and ownership on basically, are we going to fully guarantee a contract or not? Because you could take this to a place if you wanted to and say that this could be some level of evidence of ownerships colluding to make sure that we will not guarantee a contract. Because ultimately, if you trade for Lamar Jackson, or which is in essence what that non-exclusive tag would be if you're coming in and signing a deal, you need to sign one. He's still going to be on that stance. I think most people believe where I want this fully guaranteed or maybe damn near fully guaranteed. I don't know the exacts of it.
This reminds me of a couple off seasons ago when in Major League Baseball, where we went like the whole offseason and no free agents were being signed. And why was that? Because ownership basically wanted to try to, I mean, you can't reset the market, but slow down the market. And I think that that's exactly what we're seeing right here.
So, yeah, I'm just fascinated by it all. And all it takes is one. And that's why I find it amazing that the Ravens actually did this. Now, Albert Breer brought up a really interesting point. And if you are not familiar with Albert Breer, he is a senior NFL reporter for the Monday Morning Quarterback at Sports Illustrated. He brought up an interesting point, right? This could be the Ravens looking at this and saying they worked for 2 years on trying to extend him and didn't get anything done. So, because of the opportunity to match, this might be, okay, we'll let you negotiate with someone else to get this contract done, but we want to keep you, so we'll just match that, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
In some ways, letting the market dictate what the contract is. Tough thing about that is, again, just has to be one, right? Just has to be one team that's willing to do it.
And I think the Ravens probably thought, like, how many of these teams are going to want to make that type of commitment for that type of money with all the guaranteed money that he wants when he could be injured for good portions of it, all that. I tell you what, it's fascinating.
And we will find that out. Now, one thing I want to remind you, in the idea that you're talking about, with the idea that, he missed 10 games and he's had some level of injury or what have you. Something to remember, right? The NFLPA survey that came out, which was basically the players going, we're going to give a report card on all these teams.
Yeah.
We frequently view the Baltimore Ravens as a great organization.
Well, yes.
They got some really poor grades when it came to like weight room, strength staff. In fact, like I have the report card in front of me. Nutrition was a B-. Weight room was a C+. Strength staff was an F-. Training room was a C. Training staff is a B+. Right. The idea that he is unhealthy or whatever, and we've seen players of the Ravens kind of get on social media and talk about this. We've not had enough conversation about the idea that, the organization is probably not helping this along, and there might be a healthy level of distrust. And this is actually showing a healthy level of distrust from players around the league on the Ravens and their staff.
And it's been reported, I've heard it all day today, that players across the league are taking note as to how this has really, I guess you could say, evolved, but really kind of devolved, between the Ravens and Lamar.